We are back again for some brain broken film Twitter takes. Yeah, we're talking some tweets that some cinephiles have made. By the way, I hate the name cinephiles. I really don't like it. I don't categorize myself as one. I do love movies. I enjoy movies. I love movies. It's the whole reason why I do this shit in the first place. But to call somebody a cinephile is just it's just such a weird term. I'm not on board with it, and I don't think anybody should. You know what I'm saying? So welcome to Adam's Chase Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. I love you. How's everything? How's your day been? I think I'm going to make this a short one, despite the fact that I said that I want to make most of these episodes 45 to an hour. I feel like I'm going to need to cut this short because I got to go. Something that has piqued my interest this morning on Twitter or X. Fuck that. I'm calling it Twitter. It's always been Twitter. So, and the thing with Twitter, too, is that, of course, it is home of the most brain-broken takes you can possibly get. I do feel like there are some ideas and some thoughts that I'm like, oh, you know, this actually feels like it's a kind of a topic worth addressing, and that is violence. Yes. The most metal thing ever, violence. So let's just get started, shall we? We're gonna transition. You ready? Bam! Look at that. Okay. So I wanted to talk about because this tweet has definitely I wouldn't say has like it's landed in my algorithm, right? But like I don't know if it's like really taken off just because of the fact that like, you know, the Olympics and, you know, the women's boxing thing, the transvestigation is going on, which is hilarious and stupid. But I don't care about that right now, okay? Because this is more important in the Adam's Chase podcast, okay? So, this tweet is in reference to Quentin Tarantino's interview with the New Yorker around 2003. So I guess I guess he was like on tour with his with Kill Bill, and he had an interview with the New Yorker, and he had a take where I'll just pull this up. He had a take where, you know, he basically criticizes Quentin. He criticizes Stanley Kubrick. Now, I feel like, I like both of these directors, and I feel like these two directors are so fundamentally different from each other that this take is kind of hilarious. So, in any case, this is the full excerpt. Shout out to Depressed Bergman. The first 20 minutes is pretty, and this is in reference to A Clockwork Orange. So, just for a frame of reference, which is this, you know. But I don't want to show it because it's violent and it's naughty for YouTube. Full excerpt. That first 20 minutes is pretty fucking perfect. The whole nonstop parade of Alex and the Druids, or whatever they were called. I think they were Druids, but whatever. Beat up a bum. They have a gang fight. They go to the milk bar. They R-word a girl. They break into the house and they're driving and playing Beethoven, Malcolm, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So he goes on and says, I always thought Kubrick was a hypocrite. Because his party line was, I'm not making a movie about violence. I'm making a movie against violence. And it's just like, get the fuck off. I know you are, I know, and you know Your dick was hard the entire time you were shooting those first 20 minutes. This is a quote from Quentin, okay? Not me. You couldn't keep it in your pants the entire time. You were editing and scoring it. You liked the rest of the movie, but you put up with the rest of the movie. You did it for those first 20 minutes. And if you don't say you did, you're a fucking liar. I disagree with this take. I definitely disagree with this take just because of the fact that, like, I don't think it was Tarantino's intention, or sorry, God, I don't think it was Kubrick's intention to glorify violence, because, again, movies are subjective. Everybody takes home with something that they feel could be more personal, less personal. People have more an objective view on it. Some people treat it like it's a religion, or at least in my case, Star Wars, that a lot of people like to clown on. So I just don't think that his stance on this is correct, nor do I think that his analysis of A Clockwork Orange is entirely correct, because anybody who has seen A Clockwork Orange, and if you don't want A Clockwork Orange to be spoiled, crazy. But anyways, the character played by Malcolm McDowell is essentially a lunatic, and him and his band of druids all do some crazy fucked up activities, only for him to land on the wrong side of the law, and then he tries to get rehabilitated and it doesn't work, yada yada yada, right? So if anything, people would probably quantify A Clockwork Orange as like a cautionary tale, which I feel like is fair to an extent, just because I feel like that movie does depict violence in a way that feels like, it's to some people that it's glorified. I don't think it's glorified by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like with all of Kubrick's work, the dialogue, the characters are not the done-all be-all for Kubrick. It is the aesthetic. It is the atmosphere. It is the emotional imagery that he uses in order to essentially get his point across, right? It's been like that with, I would say, most of his movies, including, and I saw in some of these tweets that they say that a Full Metal Jacket is it galvanizes young people to create violence and whatnot. And I feel like some of these takes are just such. They're rooted in something that is delusional is a wrong word. It's a little too strong. I feel like it's a little obtuse. I guess is the correct word I'll use. But I just don't think that movies like that, like especially A Clockwork Orange or Full Metal Jacket, that it makes violence super fucking cool. Now, juxtapose that with Tarantino, all the violence looks fucking cool, right? In I don't want to say all of his movies, but his most famous work, right? Pulp Fiction, Inglourious Bastards, Kill Bill. It makes violence look fucking cool. But what do you see inside of those movies, right? What do you see inside of those movies, and what do you see in terms of where the story actually leads to and what the characters do in that said story, right? Kubrick follows that, of course, but like he does it in a visual, atmospheric sense, whereas Tarantino, he does care about the story. However, he will not shy away from violence. And I feel like in this day and age, violence is a weird, is kind of a weird thing, right? Considering that, we have access to all sorts of news and we see, horrible atrocities, including what's going on in the Middle East currently. It's just one of those things that, like, for most people, it's hard to watch movies that have like such crazy violence, which is understandable because, again, film is subjective. I don't see that personally because I see movies as a perspective of what the filmmaker is trying to tell, the story that they're trying to tell. Violence is just one aspect of it. It's not the done-all be-all. There's some directors that make violence just the only fucking thing there is, but there are definitely key indicators as to why that character inflicts violence or doesn't, vice versa. It feels a little narrow-minded to just completely paint a broad brushstroke of like, violence. Everybody wants to have violence because it's cool. Like, that's why they have it in movies. I'm kind of oversimplifying it in terms of film Twitter, but like it doesn't mean that violence is the thing that gets people inspired by any of it, right? Because by that logic, then video games and music and all that shit is also objectionable, right? Which some people do. Some people do feel like that influences a lot of people. I mean, look at, the 90s with hip hop, right? NWA and Fuck the Police. Like, that is something that an artist takes away from what their perspective is, and their perspective is what the art is being made, being produced, being whatever. So when it comes to violence, I don't think that it's just a binary thing of like, well, they think it's cool or they don't, and I feel like it's such a weird thing to say, just in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to movies and such, because sure, violence can be cool, I guess, but it is up to interpretation, right? Like, movies have always been, at least since the dawn of movies, is that we know who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. And then you get films that depict the villain to be a complicated person. Or you have a hero that is complicated, right? Like your anti-heroes and whatnot, right? And Cautionary Tales are also part of it. Cautionary Tales being like Fight Club or Joker. And Joker, I feel like it, at least in terms of like people's reaction to it, some people have a very weird reaction to Joker, acting like as if, like, some incels feel like the story is really about them, but it's not, right? Because that's why it's called a cautionary tale. You don't watch Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver and go, oh, see, that's a guy who gets it. It's like, no. Just like Travis Bickle, just like, Joker, which the film really has twisted and yoinked many inspirations, and I'll get to that in a second. But I feel like Cautionary Tales, it's kind of self-explanatory, right? It's like, this is a story about a guy who's living in a society that constantly rejects him or judges him. And that's a reaction to what they do. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? It doesn't really matter, because that is what the story is. The story is what is foretold. I guess I know I'm kind of, it is a long-winded way of saying that, like, it's up for your interpretation, but it really is something that people, I feel like, get lost in the translation of, because they feel like there's like a filmmaker's responsibility to make something that isn't violent in accordance to what somebody says or how they feel. And it's okay if you are not a fan of Tarantino, if you're not a fan of Kubrick, if you're not a fan of any violent movies whatsoever. I mean, I don't want to say that's fine, because it does, like, kind of shut the door on so many levels in terms of what you see in a film, because what makes a good movie isn't just the violence itself. Some people feel that way. I do not. And I feel like a lot of moviegoers and a lot of movie watchers and movie enthusiasts, cinephiles, yuck, also feel, right? And the artist's interpretation of it is not something that you can go, oh, see, that's a weird person. We don't like that person. And yeah, Tarantino has said some, like, stupid shit for sure. Does that mean he's a shit director? No. Does that mean he says, like, he has, like, kind of the wrong takes in certain circumstances? Yeah, because I don't think his take on Kubrick is I mean, that's his interpretation, but do I agree with it? I do not, because I never walked away from a Clockwork Orange or something like Full Metal Jacket where I go, man, violence is cool. Like, I walk away from it thinking I need a shower and I need a long, hard look at myself and why I did not like, the depiction of it. Not saying that it's a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. I just feel like, something that sticks with you is the filmmaker's job. That's their job. As controversial as it is, as divisive as it is, as whatever, it is their job to evoke that feeling from a particular, audience or what have you. I just, it feels a little reductionist to just go and say that, like, that you're a fucking liar if you don't get off on the violence. It's like, that's a little weird to say to another filmmaker, and sure, like, I have had my takes on filmmakers that I don't agree with. Does that mean that they're a shit person or whatever? No, it's just that body of work, or that work specifically, I don't agree with, right? And as much as I won't say that, like, A Clockwork Orange is one of my favorite movies, but I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's a good movie. I don't think I'm going to be watching it anytime soon. It's not a rewatchable movie, but it does lend itself to getting the audience thinking. And that's what's powerful about film. And violence is just one part of that, because the other parts are they emotionally invested, like your characters are of an altruistic, moral, good person, or are they inherently bad, trying to do the right thing or trying to do a good thing, or are they just straight up bad, period, end of story, and that can be just the case itself. A lot of Marvel movies do that. Superhero movies do that. A lot of action movies do that, especially in the 80s, people had their scare of Russians and shit like that, right? Like Red Dawn, or, well, that was different, right? But, like, any interpretation of any communism is evil, just immediately evil, right? Not saying I'm defending communism, but you get my point, right? It's like if you have a film that depicts a certain group of people as bad or good, you then have that stance as a filmmaker to go, okay, this is my story and this is how I feel about this certain situation. Regardless if I agree or not, I didn't agree with, like, you know, early 2000s, mid 2000s, post 9/11 in their depiction of terrorists, essentially. You know, there are, I would say, way more American terrorists in terms of, you know, fucking shootings that go along. Um, that does not make it okay, but does that make the film like a shit film and I will never watch it? Of course I will watch it, you know? Like it doesn't matter, right? Because it's a movie. Just because a movie evokes a negative feeling does not take away from the fact that that movie exists and is what it is, because other people are going to watch it and go, that was good, you know? And you, like, it's not up to us, you know, film enthusiasts, to go, well, you're wrong and here's why you're wrong. You're doing the political shit. Like, do that in politics. When you do it with film, you kind of, like, a lot of people lose the plot. And I like seeing discussions and seeing people's takes on it. But when you start to, you know, throw shade at other people because of their, you know, 2 cents into it, you just lose it. You know, you're not getting the idea of it and why a film is the way that it is. Because honestly, like, my favorite film of Tarantino's is Jackie Brown. That's my all-time favorite movie. Just because of the fact that, like, there's these characters that you sort of, like, are attached to, you know, from the first act all the way to the third act. And I'm not saying I'm attached to them because they are, you know, I think they're cool or they're great or anything. I mean, they're some diabolical characters, but whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that I enjoy the film for a number of reasons. And I feel like the dialogue and the pacing and everything about, and the soundtrack is just really fucking fun. It's a fun fucking movie to see, like, this story unfold. And the one thing that I love about movies is getting to the bottom of shit. And that's basically what the movie is. It's just getting to the bottom of something. That's why Heat is also fucking awesome. There's tons of violence in that. But does that mean that Michael Mann is trying to get people to feel like, oh, well, I want people to think that robbing banks is pretty fucking sick? You know? It's like, no, not really. Like, why do we care about Robert De Niro's character in Heat, right? And why do we care about, you know, Al Pacino's character in Heat, right? It's like the dichotomy of both of those characters simultaneously being different, but also the very fucking same. And y'all know that scene that I'm talking about with the restaurant and shit like that. Powerful. And it's just two people talking, having fucking coffee and shit like that. And it's like a masterclass in acting, in dialogue, in all of it. And I feel like it brings out what people think and how people feel. And when you feel conflicted about characters, that works. That's what makes the movie fucking awesome. And it's great. That's a great fucking thing for a filmmaker to do. Scorsese has done it. Michael Mann has done it countless times. And even Tarantino. You know, do I agree with everything that all these directors have and their takes and whatnot? I still watch Scorsese films, even though he shits on Marvel all the time. He shits on him all the time. He doesn't call him cinema. I feel like that's dumb. I feel like Marvel is absolutely cinema. What makes it cinema to me is you have a movie like Iron Man, right? That came out of fucking nowhere. And you stick with that said character for years and years and years, culminating into something as extravagant as Endgame. You get the entire audience reacting in such a way that feels like you are watching a motion comic book come to life, essentially, because that's how people reacted even when comic books come around and shit like that, right? Despite whether they agree with it or don't, you still have that feeling, right? And yeah, I mean, like, breaking it down to its politics is also one thing as well. And I feel like, you know, people who do that, that's whatever. That's, you know, that's kind of par for the course, right? It just feels like people who have their depiction of all this is, you know, calling other people silly or dumb for liking something that they enjoyed or that they didn't enjoy. Is a little fucking silly, you know. We all know that, you know, Batman is a glorified, you know. I know I keep bringing it back to superheroes. I'm sorry. It's I've been thinking a lot about Deadpool, and I've been thinking a lot about you know, superhero movies in general. So that's why. Also, I did watch a movie last night. It's by Ingmar Bergman, Cries and Whispers, yesterday. And there was, I don't want to say that there's violence in it, but there's a little bit of violence in it, and it's uncomfortable just because of how the story unfolds. And it takes place in this one particular setting, you know, between these sisters who just want to, you know, come together for a tragedy that befell another sister. And you would imagine that a movie like that would bring these characters together because, you know, their family member has passed. And you realize that, well, no, that's not the case, because these people are different. And people just are inherently different. And all of these characters in that movie are different from one another. Some want love. Some just require distance and don't even want to be fucking touched at all. So I think that it's powerful. It's a powerful storytelling tool that makes me think and makes me feel in a way that maybe goes against what I initially felt from the beginning of it. Then towards the end, it's like 180. You just completely flip around and go, oh, well, this fucking sucks. And that's in the same vein of Kubrick's work, right? You don't walk away from Full Metal Jacket and just go, wow, I should join the military. It is like, I hate guns so much and I hate war so much that I despise the infantilization of violence, even though I'm sure there are some people who saw that and was like, this fucking rules, you know, and that's definitely weird. I have a couple questions, but does that mean I'm going to yuck their yum? No. Although, sure, they can be wrong, and their interpretation of violence can be wrong. Still, nonetheless, it is what the audience take with it and how they feel from that thing, right? So, all in all, I feel like, you know, violence is violence doesn't need to be glorified if that's not what the filmmaker's intention is, or, you know, their initial intentions, right? And who knows what the filmmaker's intentions are? That's why they make the film, right? Is because, you know, the conflicting emotion of it, it's kind of like an Ouroboros. It just constantly swallows its own tail, and you kind of come back to the same conclusion as you have originally arrived at, right? with a few exceptions, of course. But yeah, I feel like a filmmaker's perspective on violence doesn't mean that they are obsessed with it. I just think that a filmmaker's depiction on violence or as a result of violence is what the story unfolded. That's how the story just goes, essentially. So, yeah, I mean, do a lot of people disagree with this? If you do, let me know. I definitely want to have a conversation on it. I just don't think that filmmakers making a story is all about like we just got to have more guns the better, you know. So yeah, and you see this in every form of media, right? So you kind of just have to take it all with a grain of salt and just know that if you disagree with somebody, especially on a great little website called Twitter, you kind of have to remind yourself that like if the movie they are talking about that they are shitting on kind of hurts your feelings or makes you feel like you have to say something, more times than not, it's just you're going to get into an intellectual argument with somebody who you're just going to waste your time with, only to arrive to the same conclusion as you did before. You still feel the way that you feel. That's just how you feel, you know? That's what makes people unique and great and wonderful, especially different filmmakers like Kubrick or Tarantino. You know, despite the fact that Tarantino has like a very interesting take on Stanley Kubrick's work, I feel like it doesn't undermine anything that the guy has made. You know, he says some stupid shit, he says some okay shit, and he has a couple of stances that are pretty solid, I guess. But overall, yeah, he's just a weird dude who just fucking loves movies like a lot, you know. So yeah, that's as far as I can go. I gotta hit the road, y'all. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate ya. I hope you're doing well. Drink lots of water. I know I haven't because it is hot, and no amount of water is ever going to get rid of this sweat, this greasiness that is my face. Okay, so yeah, and wash your hands, I guess. Okay, I'll see y'all later. Bye bye.